we're seeing the 8 and 9 conference game debate going on as well. That's been a debate for like 3 or 4 years now. It seems like. What are your thoughts on the 8 or 9 game conference schedule, Jordan? I don't. I get different opinions from different people on it.
Well, it's currently 8 right now,
Yes.
correct? I would honestly keep it at 8. I mean, but maybe I'm a little bit of a little biased because, I'm a fan of the SEC and everything. Of course, like wouldn't want to make it more difficult for these SEC teams to get into the playoffs. But I mean, I don't know. Like I kind of like, I mean, I will say it would be nice to see better out of conference games. It would be nice not to always see like Chattanooga pop up or like New Mexico State, for example, for next year. It'd be nice to see some bigger matchups in that sense, but adding another conference game, I don't know if I'm there for that. Instead of doing that, I would say like have one big opponent outside of the conference and you can have like 3 cupcake teams.
Yeah. I because I am an admirer of tradition. I enjoy it. I would honestly rather see the 9 than the 8 because what they would be planning on doing is keeping one permanent opponent and rotating 7 if you were to do an 8. Whereas with a 9 game conference schedule, you would have 3 permanent opponents and 6 rotating. And I just think there are too many things that you would be sacrificing, too many storied rivalries. I know tradition doesn't mean a ton to some people, especially the ones that are the higher ups in college athletics right now. But I just think about it like Tennessee, in all likelihood, would be grouped with Vanderbilt. And look, not that there is anything wrong with getting wins over Vanderbilt more often than not if you're Tennessee, but it's just not a game Tennessee gets up for a ton. I don't feel like it's just kind of like, hey, it's there. If we're good enough, we'll win that game. If we suck, oh no, now we look terrible. But if you were to keep 3 of them, let's say, I don't know, maybe you get Kentucky and Alabama on there. Maybe you sacrifice Florida. But I just think about it. There's too many things that you could be losing. Like the third Saturday of October would be gone if you were to do a 1-7 because Alabama would be grouped with Auburn. Auburn, in turn, would lose the Deep South's oldest rivalry with Georgia in all likelihood if you were to group in states. You would never see Alabama play LSU regularly again. At least it would be every couple of seasons. If you were to do that. So I just think there are too many great historical matchups. Another one, you would see Texas and Texas A&M group together as opposed to Texas and Oklahoma, and you would probably kill off the Red River Shootout in favor of Oklahoma and Missouri, who have played a lot traditionally, but I would not call them huge rivals.
Yeah, see, I didn't know about that with us like only playing one conference, like have one set conference team per year. I didn't know about that. So I changed my mind.
Yeah,
100%.
It's a math thing because like if you were to do like 2 and 6, I don't think works with rotating because that's 3 teams and then you'd have what 6. Geez, there's a reason I didn't take up a career of any kind of math. You wouldn't have enough, I don't think, to rotate 6 if you kept 2 permanent opponents. And the same thing goes for like if you were to do 1 and 8, that just wouldn't be possible because there's not enough either. So yeah, I feel like if you were to make a decision there, it'd move to 9. And you mentioned this earlier too. Like I would be all for getting rid of the FCS games because, and not to say that the SEC should conform to the Big Ten, but I look at some of the rationale, like, seeing what they said this year on the committee too. Cupcake Saturday being a thing near the end of the season in the SEC, and that's That's one of the big knocks I feel like on the league. Like I just know it always sucks being that one team, or I guess one of the four teams that plays each other that weekend in the SEC, because you just know the rest of the league is winning 57-0 against Mercer. Because it's just not as fun that way. I don't feel like, and it's not as fun for fans either. You know, I'm sure if you're a young parent, you want to get your kid to their first ever college football game. That's a good way to do it, and that's great. But to people that really enjoy the sport, I just don't feel like that is as fun. It's just it's not like, again, last year Tennessee played Chattanooga to open the season. That's not super exciting. Half your fans are gone by the middle of the third quarter because it's hot outside and you're up 57-0. It's just it's not as fun, and I think by substituting that out for either another conference game or just getting rid of those bye games altogether, you are doing a big favor both to yourself with your strength of schedule and then also to your fans. I think it just makes things more interesting.
Yeah, my only concern would be just other conferences not doing the same, because it would suck for SEC teams to be like punished for playing a harder schedule and not being able to make it in there, if that ended up being the case.
I don't think that is the case, because the Big Ten already does it. The Big 12 already does it. I'm trying to think. The ACC either did it or was an eight game non-conference schedule or moved to a 9 here recently. Let me take a peek at it real quick and I can tell you, but it's just, I just don't get a whole lot of joy out of seeing these beatdowns. Yeah, so they're still at 4, because I'm just looking here at Stanford's schedule. They have Hawaii, BYU, San Jose State, and Notre Dame out of conference. That's 4, but maybe they need it in the ACC just because that league is struggling right now, because the two members that are their biggest revenue sources in football, not in all sports, are suing to get out of there. So you need all the help you can get.
Well, if they did change to the 9, or if they kept the 8 conference opponents and everything, and they only had one team that would stay there on the schedule each year, Tennessee most certainly would get screwed. Because I got humbled a while ago. I made the mistake of going to a Florida forum page. I just wanted to see what Florida fans had to say. And I was like, so who is like Florida's biggest rival out there? None of them were mentioning Tennessee. Tennessee was like 3rd or 4th on the list.
That's accurate, just, yeah.
Yeah, and it hurt a little bit seeing that, not gonna lie. But like in situations like that, I mean, the only team that Tennessee's biggest rivals with would be Vanderbilt. I mean, Kentucky, you would argue that Louisville would be a bigger opponent for them. Alabama, you got Auburn. Florida, you got Georgia. I mean,
so what would happen was you'd have your in-state battles locked up in all likelihood. You would see Arkansas play LSU, which I'm all for because I think that's a terrific game. Same thing with Georgia and Florida. And then you'd get a couple oddballs like South Carolina playing Kentucky every year, which that just doesn't do a whole lot for me, because those teams, they've had good games in the past, but they don't hate each other that much. Like, they're, first of all, not that close together geographically. And then second, just not historically great programs either, which I don't know, maybe that puts them on even footing, but like there's not really a whole lot of animosity there, I don't think.
No, and you want to see those traditions stay intact, or at least that's the way that I feel. Like if I had to choose 3 teams that Tennessee would play against every year, I would choose Alabama, Florida, and probably Vanderbilt, to be honest, just because the history is there and stuff. You could argue Georgia just for the sake of it, like becoming like a newer type rival, but I would probably go Vanderbilt, Alabama, and Florida for my 3 permanent rivals.
Yeah, and I think you could also make a compelling argument for Kentucky, or at least Kentucky fans would, just because I feel like that's who Kentucky hates the most in the SEC is Tennessee. And, you know, that if you were to get Vandy, Kentucky, and Bama as your permanent 3, then a lot of those years you're going 2-1 against that. So I'm willing to hear both sides of it, but also I think the more competitive matchups you can find, the better. Because Vandy and Kentucky are both games that Tennessee fans just look at and say, I'm not super excited for that game, but we cannot lose it. That is the bottom line with 2 matchups every year.
Yeah, honestly, it's a little stressful too when like Vanderbilt ends up doing better than expected throughout the season. Like I know I was a little bit nervous this past year with everything Diego Pavia was doing. I was like, man, Tennessee's gonna lose to Vanderbilt this year, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
Never want to have that thought go through the back of your head.
No, it's not. And I'm sure there are several other SEC schools that feel that way about another school in the league.